In current trans affairs, there is a lot of discussion about representation in the media and the lack of positive and accurate representation. There is also a lot of internal discussion within the LGBT community about people who are a part of it who are also transphobic, trying to change it from LGBT to LGB. Um, this type of erasure of the trans community within the LGBT community itself makes it a unsafe place for young trans people to feel comfortable in expressing themselves. It's also very difficult for us considering that the government supports the LGBT alliance. Along with that, TERFs such as J.K. Rowling end up excluding trans women from their fight for women's rights. By excluding trans women, they are not fighting for women's rights, they are fighting for cis people's rights and nothing else. This exclusion for trans women makes them a lot more susceptible to being hate crimed and feeling uncomfortable going out in public, expressing themselves as who they are. These types of problems are ones that cannot be ignored and are some of the main reasons as to why we are making this documentary. Is to show people that we are just normal people that they are, who just so happen to not conform to gender stereotypes or gender norms. Hi, would you like to introduce yourself?
My name is Theo. I'm 19 and I'm a trans man.
Okay, so we shall move on to the professional section.
Yeah.
Okay, so what was the first representation in media you saw for trans people?
I can't remember specifically, but originally the first sort of representation I saw was in comedy, and it was sort of portrayed as quite a disgusting thing or something. That was a joke rather than anything else, and that did make me feel quite embarrassed or ashamed to be trans. But then in more recent times, I've seen trans representation in sort of TV shows. For example, Sabrina, there was a trans man called Theo Putnam. I didn't name myself after him, that was afterwards, it was just a happy coincidence. And I love Ellen Cox in Orange is the New Black.
Yeah.
So that portrayed trans people in sort of a more accurate way than comedy did.
Okay. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, so I'm Ollie, I'm 18 and I'm a trans man.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Would you like to tell us about yourself?
I'm a medical student at the University of Liverpool, and I'm also in a band. I play the piano and the flute, so yeah, good times. I think the first time I ever saw trans people in media is probably on TV, so Transparent on Amazon. It wasn't the best representation. I can't really remember it massively because I was quite young, but the trans lady in it was played by a cisgender man, which I feel like is not the best representation because it kind of perpetuates that stereotype that trans women are still men, which obviously they're not, and I think that casting is quite problematic. And before I came out, there was barely any representation, so I just was like, oh, a trans person on telly. So I think that representation is important because it's good to see someone who's like you. But the representation needs to be good for it to be supportive.
Yeah, definitely. Hi, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. I'm Sky Harrison. I use she, her pronouns. Sort of, I'm a trans activist and member of the Socialist Workers' Party.
Awesome. Is anything else you'd like to say? What you do at university, that type of stuff?
Yeah, sure. So I'm a student at Liverpool Hope University. I study English Lit and Social Policy. I'm in my second year. Yeah, sure. So the one that stood out to me is a sort of a trans police officer in Twin Peaks, where I didn't realize she was trans until years afterwards, because although she's very like quote non-passing, and seen as the show was made in the early 90s, it plays into stereotypes quite heavily. But what's really good about it is that it shows a very progressive sort of alternative to trans people in the public sphere, in that like if someone misgenders her, she's like, screw you, correct it. And it's not really played as a joke, it's just she happens to be there. And I mean, if you want to go further back, I'm sure there's some really dodgy trans people that I can hardly even remember on like old late night TV shows. But the one that really stood out to me was the officer in Twin Peaks, just because of how sort of nonchalant it is and how it isn't a big deal to her character.
Did like the first representations you saw affect like your view of yourself and how long it took you to come out or not?
Yeah, definitely. So I was quite ashamed to be trans.
Yeah.
I was quite embarrassed of my identity, and it took me quite a long time to come out. So I knew I was trans at sort of 11 or 12,
Yeah.
and I didn't come out until last year. So a year ago.
When I met you.
Yeah, basically. So yeah, it took me a long time to sort of be happy with myself and be happy with the way I thought people would view me before I came out.
Yeah.
I think I was already really scared of coming out, and then I watched that, and the reaction was fairly negative by the family. And I think it probably made me even more scared to come out, because I was like, oh no, because it didn't really show much support and like,
Yeah.
as well, it didn't it wasn't a very factually accurate representation, and it probably just made me like, I don't know, because of it being a cisgender man, I think that's quite a toxic way
Yeah.
to portray people.
First came out, like seeing other people in representation, being represented in media even, was a big deal to me, I guess, because it meant that I saw people who were similar to me, but it wasn't really the big deal for me. What was really important to me was seeing trans people physically in the street. So they're no longer some sort of alien object on TV. It was instead seeing my friends and other people like that, kind of showing me that this thing can exist. I don't know why, but for sort of media, TV, film, seeing people there so like alien and abstract to me, I can't really apply it to my life too much. So although the representation was like very useful to me coming out as like, it kind of like was a catalyst, I suppose, it never was really the main thing, I don't think.
Wish you knew when you were first questioning your gender identity. What is something you wish you could have seen to help explain or make you feel comfortable?
I wish I knew that a lot of people don't actually care
Yeah.
how you identify. You're just still you. And a lot of the people that I was close to sort of responded with that, I don't care, you're still you.
Yeah.
And I wish I knew that people would view me that way before I came out, because I was very, very afraid of how people would see me, or if they'd be sort of like disgusted by who I am.
Yeah.
But that's definitely not been the case.
Yeah.
I think I wish I knew that it was okay. Like,
Yeah.
and there's definitely people out there that will support you, even if the media and people around you are telling you it's not okay. It definitely is, and you will find people. When you start looking, there's so many groups,
Yeah.
and as well, you think that you're from a straight society, but when you get to know people, there's the LGBT community everywhere, and people will support you, people will accept you. You've just got to find them people. I found you.
Yeah. You say even in our
tiny
fairly
little
middle
town.
class conservative town,
Yeah,
there was still an LGBT group.
definitely, and you just got to find it.
Yeah.
Find the people that accept you.
Do a bit of hunting. We're there.
Yeah.
We're everywhere.
And just know that it's okay to be yourself.
Yeah. Awesome.
So I think I would have liked to have known that it's not hard to find other people like me. I mean,
Yeah.
we make up a much larger proportion of the population than people realise. So I think when I came out, being able to find links to especially older trans people,
Yeah.
knowing that we've been around for far longer than just 10 years, would have been really important to me. And I think what's also really important, and I would have liked to have known when I was younger, is that you look out and you see how desperate the situation is, especially when I came out, like, well, when I started questioning my gender like 6-7 years ago.
Yeah.
I would have liked to have known that there's been a history within sort of trans movements of standing up and fighting back. I'd have liked to have known about Stonewall, about sort of lesbians, gays, support the minors, rather than just being given a very hopeless situation, a hopeless picture of the world. Yeah, because we have a really rich tradition of fighting for our rights and fighting for the rights of other people. And I'd like to have known that the situation wasn't so hopeless. I think with the sort of resurgence in the Reclaim Pride movement and fighting for sort of trans rights today, I think that what makes me really hopeful is that I know that people have a different view on trans people fighting back now. 7 years ago, nothing was happening other than commercial prides, but now I know that the situation has changed, which gives me a lot of hope young trans people who are discovering themselves.
Yeah.